Inside this room, all of my dreams become realities, and some of my realities become dreams.
What in the wide, wide world of sports is going on here? Alive! It's alive! It's alive!
You are listening to The Wilder Ride, getting wilder by the minute. Here are your hosts, Alan Sanders and Walt Murray.
Welcome back, everyone, to The Wilder Ride, Getting Wilder by the Minute, a podcast where we are breaking down and celebrating the Gene Wilder film, Young Frankenstein, one sweet mystery of life. We're so glad you found us at a time. I'm Alan Sanders, I'm your host.
And I'm Walt Murray, your co-host.
And joining us is a man who probably doesn't need an introduction at this point in time. And if you are a fan of the Movies by Minutes, you likely have already plowed through many of their already existing episodes. But welcome back, Pete Mummert from the Indiana Jones Minute.
Thank you.
Great to have you back. Before we can go any further into this minute number 94, which begins with Elizabeth saying, "Who are you? What are you?" and ending with a song, "Sweet Mystery of Life, I'm so glad I found you." I need to explain what has gone completely awry from the way the script was put together, scenes removed, and the way this all got us to where we are today. Because the film we're looking at, the final version that made it to theaters, that is the classic we are breaking down 1 minute at a time, was not going to be anything close to what we've had in the last couple of minutes and leading into the next few minutes and even into the end of the movie. Are you guys ready for this?
Yeah.
This should be good.
So, remember when the mob was getting ready to leave and I said, well, they've kind of put that in a different order. It was supposed to go to the mob first, then Elizabeth. Well, let's go here to the castle at night when Elizabeth hears something outside her window. The minute we pretty much just discussed. She hears outside the window, turns towards the French doors, then decides it's nothing and gets into bed. Fade to black. Cut to Inspector Kemp and the villagers are at the steps of the castle. Inspector Kemp pounds on the front door. Cut back to Elizabeth's bedroom. Elizabeth lies in bed, illuminated by the flames from her fireplace. There is the sound of the curtains flapping. The French doors have been opened. The silk curtains flapping from a breeze outside. Elizabeth has a contented smile on her face. Her eyes are closed. A large shadow grows against the well behind her. It crosses her face and blots out her key light. She opens her eyes and looks ahead. Her face freezes in terror. Cut back to the castle. The front doors are open, and Dr. Frankenstein appears in his robe. He looks at the angry mob gathered at his front door. He says, "Yes? Forgive us for intruding so late at night, Herr Baron, but an ugly rumor persists that there are strange goings on in this castle. These good citizens are ready to rip you limb from limb unless you can offer some rational explanation for their fears. How say you?" Freddy. Ugly, vicious rumors. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream. The scream we hear as the camera stops and kind of fake pushes into the moon that we get. Maybe that's why they did it. Because now the villagers are saying, "What was that? Listen, did you hear that, Inspector Kemp? They say you have recreated the horrible monster who has haunted and terrorized the God-fearing people of this village. What say you to that?" Freddy says rubbish. Igor comes running out from inside the castle. "He's back! He's back! The monster's back!" Freddy then looks at everyone. Freddy says, well, what monster? Igor, "What do you mean, what monster? We remember, the one we made in the basement?" Freddy, "I think we all need a good night's sleep. Why don't we meet next week and thrash this thing out?" Igor, "You don't understand, master. The big fellow's broken in and kidnapped your fiancée." Freddy, "What?" Igor, "He's carrying her off now through the woods." Freddy, Igor, and the mob turn around to the side of the castle. Cut to exterior side of the castle. The monster can be seen just a few feet below, disappearing into the woods. Elizabeth is slung over his back. Villagers begin yelling, "There he is! After him! Get him! Kill him!" Inspector Kemp and all of the villagers then run off after the monster, leaving Freddy and Igor alone. Igor, "What now, boss? A little something to eat and then join in the chase?" Freddy, "No! We've got to get him back here. I've got to relieve the pressure on his cerebellum." Igor, "I like your style, master." Freddy, "There's only one way to equalize the imbalance in his cerebrospinal fluid. One slim chance, and I've got to take it." Then cut to woods at night. Villagers are on the hunt with the Burgermeister pulling the lead. There is a Great Dane. Villagers are also running through the hills and looking through the rocks. Dogs begin barking. Now we cut to Elizabeth on a bed of leaves in a cave, slowly opening her eyes. Now all of the frickin' cut-tos and all the chasing makes sense.
Yeah, wow.
All of that taken out and in a different order. There was going to be an entire confrontation at the front door, some bits of comedy about what monster, and Igor, the one that we just made downstairs.
I love the basement life.
Yeah.
So it explains why they crossed. Now, I don't know how they got up to the bridge across the doorway where they would have met Dr. Frankenstein, but that explains why they leave what looks like from the castle in the previous minute, cut to a rickety bridge, cut to the middle of the woods because they're trying to go after the monster. Now all of that suddenly makes sense.
Right.
And unfortunately, we cut all this out, so that's why I was having such a hard time with it.
But they had to cut it out because it would have obliterated the timeline because they already knew the monster was there. They had already had the putting on the Ritz scene. And so they knew that the monster existed and that he had created it. So...
Wait a minute. Are you pulling a me? Are you putting the logic hat on?
Were you, do you think I'm about to quote Jaws? Is that what you mean?
Stop. No, seriously, your quote, you're pulling a me.
Yes, I am.
You suddenly realized they don't have to prove that there's a monster. They already did.
Know. I mean, they've already had him in shackles. He's murdered the jailkeeper. Yeah, no, it sounds great. It would have been a good scene, except that it would have... There's nowhere where it would fit.
It doesn't make any sense. Mm-mm. Inspector Kemp already knows they've captured the monster. They saw him on stage. So why is he coming here saying, we're here to put the fears of these good citizens to rest before they rip you limb from limb?
Yeah, no, and he is the one who already incited the riot.
And to pretend that there's no monster, for him to say, what are you talking about? And... It's a great moment by itself, but in the context of everything else we've shot and revealed, it makes no sense.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, I think you're right.
No.
Now, let me...
Okay, my mind is blown. It absolutely could not work.
Okay, so I said before we even rolled that I was going to reveal something that was going to blow your mind. So you admit. Pete, what about you?
Yep. Blown.
Boom. And come on back tomorrow for the next minute.
It's been great, folks. Thanks.
As these guys have been reduced to slobbering.
Well, I don't even understand why it's in the script where it is, because it doesn't work.
No, this is exactly how it was supposed to play out. We weren't supposed to see her kidnapped until well after the confrontation at the door, hear her scream. So this explains why they didn't have anything to really cut to, since they decided to cut all of this out. That's why they had to resort to freeze framing on Frankenstein's monster in the door frame in front of the French doors, and then kind of do that real odd push into the moon to cover that they didn't have anything to transition once they decided to get rid of all of these scenes.
Wow. I do like the scene, though. Like, even if it didn't fit, it sounds like it would have been a funny scene.
Yeah, it would have. But,
See, Walt's mind is blown.
Okay, so let me collect myself here. So, I thinking about the scene, I like what they were trying to do. I think you're right. I think that would have been a great scene. But it doesn't really... I'm trying to think of where in the movie you could have put that and made it work. And I don't think there is a place that it could have fit. How about you, Pete? Do you see a place where they could have put that in and made it fit?
No, I mean, nowhere better than that. And it didn't fit there.
No. So again, a well-written scene, but... Mm-hmm. It doesn't work.
Here's an example of where being in film and creating projects, whether it's a commercial or whether it's a short or whether it's a full length, I've always heard this expression and I believe it fully. A movie is conceived in the camera, but it is not birthed until it is coming out of editing.
True.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's up to the director to get all of the necessary material to give the editor something to actually create a living, breathing movie. It's not the director, it's the editor that actually makes that final movie happen.
Right.
And I think this is an example of where they realized when they had the first cut of the film, and this goes back, if you've been with us all this time, you've heard this before, but if you maybe just stumbled on this minute, the initial cut of this movie, Mel Brooks and Gene Wilder, their hearts sank. They thought they had an absolute disaster on their hands. They cut about an hour out of the final movie in a basically what they call a marathon editing session to just prune everything that either didn't work, didn't make sense, or ruined the flow of the movie.
If this scene had been shot and was in there, that would have been the easiest one to cut. Because, this would be like when they were scooping Rose up out of the Atlantic, saying, hey, watch out for the iceberg. I mean, the ship's already down. The disaster has already happened. That's not when you talk about the iceberg. This is the same thing. This would have been so out of place. I think it would have been a disaster to have this scene in the movie, especially at this point.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah. So I thought you would like that. I love the fact that when I can find the script to a film and go and look at how they initially thought, and in a lot of these cases, shot all of this and chose to prune it from the final release. So I'd love to find this scene. This would be a fun one if it existed somewhere, if someone, found it and released it somewhere. Because like the one big scene we found very early in the film of the reading of the will, of Beaufort's will, loved seeing that scene. Yeah. It was like a 7-minute scene taken out of the movie, but it helped really explain a lot of the stuff you had to just kind of assume. You just never knew for sure why things were happening at the very beginning of the movie, why the guy was showing up, why young Frankenstein was considered the heir. You just didn't know. It all got filled in, but it also was a very long scene that you realize, okay, it's cool to see, but I didn't necessarily need it. It wasn't a hole in the movie. It just sort of answered a lot of questions that you could probably have figured out for yourself, but maybe for a slower audience, they needed it.
Right. Yeah, well, and, we talked about the Jack Sprat scene that they wrote and filmed.
Oh, yeah, the whole highwayman trying to rob Frankenstein's creature in the middle of the
monster and he got annihilated. Yeah, I found that on one of my versions.
You shared it, didn't you, on our Facebook page?
No, I just shot it and sent it to you.
Oh, you did? You need to put it on our
I need to.
I've
got it saved on my phone.
Yeah, Pete, I don't know if you saw, if you knew,
I'd love to
that.
see that.
There's a whole scene where a guy thinks he's going to rob some poor hapless victim walking the streets at night and ends up jumping out in front of Frankenstein's creature.
Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah, he definitely pays the price for it. So, but even that scene, it was okay. It wasn't great, but they didn't need it, so I'm glad they cut it. But if they had left it in, it would have been fine. This scene would have not been fine.
Right. No. This scene has too many factual continuity errors from what's already been established.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's get to what is actually in this minute then and start talking it through. Elizabeth has just woken up and has just basically asked,
What are you? What do you want? What are you going to do to me?
Where is she? And, she realizes there's this thing, and what are you? What do you want? What are you going to do with me? And then says,
I'm not afraid of you.
I'm not afraid of you. So let's talk about the tone of this scene for just a moment, because we have to decide which audience was accepting of this kind of a comedy bit, because we are in the 21st century right now analyzing a movie 1 minute at a time. Mm-hmm. Of all the minutes in this movie, this is the one that I found the most uncomfortable for me.
Yeah, by far for me. And if you haven't guessed already, I'm not a very politically correct person. I mean, I try.
That's
try
what's
to be
funny.
Respectful.
You've been worried about this minute coming up, and you are one of the least politically correct people I know. You have no filter.
I won't say no filter. It's just not activated.
Well, generally your filter kicks in when it's going to be where you're pleading the fifth.
Right. Well, that is true. I have a very healthy respect for the fifth minute. But this is a tough scene. And I have
because it's played for comedy.
It's played for comedy, and it's borderline a rape scene. And being the father of daughters, being somebody who is who works around the law all the time, not works around the law, but is involved in legal issues as a private investigator, and having grown up in a law enforcement family, I really have a healthy respect for the law and for people. And this is a bothersome scene for me.
At some level.
At some level. I mean,
because I think we both understand why it's supposed to be a funny scene.
Yeah. Yeah. I do understand why it's supposed to be funny. I don't find it very funny.
Yeah.
And granted, it isn't a, pure violent rape scene. She is on one level, a willing participant.
You gotta choose your words better, man. don't say willing participant.
Okay, let's edit that. Yeah. She
had it coming.
No.
What the heck?
She makes a couple of comments.
If she didn't want it, she shouldn't address that way.
I know that's how that sounded.
Yes, we got to fix that.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe we should let Pete talk.
What she said? Yeah, I'm going to let Pete talk in just a second.
You go ahead.
Thanks, Pete. You jack.
When someone's digging a hole, you just back up and let them keep the shovel.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to get to is she does make two comments. I mean, she, when he reveals himself, she makes a very positive comment towards things. But this is a very difficult scene.
You can't get any closer to walking that fine line than maybe what they do here. And it still lands for me still a little more on the uncomfortable side. Again, I've got 4 daughters as well.
Yeah.
So.
And even for 1974, I can't imagine this being a...
Well, don't forget, that's a whole different time. 74, you're running the backside of the 60s. You're still in that whole disco craze. It's still all about free love and everyone's going out with everybody and doing all this stuff. There isn't any worry yet about the diseases that are going to kill you. There are some, but they're not thinking about that. That's not in the public consciousness. It's so hard for us to imagine, though, living in a time frame where this would be thought of as, oh, well, of course, he's just seducing her. That's just what happens all the time.
Right, because this is not seduction.
Well,
this is,
again, it's such a fine line.
Base seduction.
Well, Pete, let's get your thoughts on this because we're already explaining how we knew this minute was going to be maybe the most difficult to kind of cover because it is in a comedy. It is supposed to be sort of a funny scene, but how do we in a 21st century world look at this film versus how a 1974 audience would look at this film?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, we went through kind of the same thing with Temple of Doom, with sort of some of the racism things going on. Like the Indian dinner, and it's sometimes it's difficult to, these are movies that are calling back to an earlier time and earlier social conventions, and B, they're movies made before the present. So you've got 2 layers of stuff going on, and it's like both layers can be uncomfortable at the same time.
Yeah. Well, and it is hard to put this in a 1974, mind frame. And honestly, I think it would be easier to explain, hey, 1974, there's a lot of racism. America was not as progressive and wise on those issues as we are now. But this one is still a tough one to go, when was this ever really okay? Right. When was it ever okay to force yourself on someone?
All right. So let's figure out where we've got at least that we're walking on a spider's web fine line here. When I mean a fine line, she doesn't necessarily fight, yell, doesn't say no. So she's not protesting, but she's still a little concerned. And so that's, again, that fine line. He doesn't necessarily attack. I mean, you can't go toward your victim any more slowly. This is Pepe Le Pew speed here.
Right.
So it's not like she couldn't get away. It's not like she was shackled or handcuffed. So I do think that we have to play a little into the convention that she probably is as worldly as we both suspect she is. Mm-hmm. So this is not necessarily new for her, not in the sense of somebody doing this to her, but that she's probably done something similar, put somebody at the end of her leash and kind of had her way. Look how easily she can make her way with Dr. Frankenstein. She knows how to manipulate and get him to do what she wants. Now here's somebody who's kind of reversing it on her. So she's not necessarily negative toward it, but I think what her negativity is, I don't like the fact that someone else is calling the shots. And he seems to be calling the shots here, even though he's not saying anything.
Speak! Why don't you speak?
And there is the second moment, which you alluded to, when he shows the schwanzstucker.
Oh my God. Woof.
And she goes, woof. And her attitude completely changes, like, wow.
I'm engaged. And once he took, but I didn't, it was never time. All the, oh my,
Right.
Yeah.
That almost is like, she's into it too.
Right.
So I wonder how much of what she's doing early is playing the part of, oh, I'm not like this.
Well, she does when she says calm down, it's exactly the way she talks to Freddy.
Calm down.
Like it's exactly.
Yes.
For a minute there, it's like she's going to try to deal with him the same way she deals with, Frankenstein. And then it's like at some point she realizes, oh, wait a minute, maybe he does have something I'd like.
Here actually as well, in the middle of these I'm going to call it protestations, because she's not really protesting. She's more like trying to convince him, you need to let me go. She does mention, finally it's confirmed, my father is very rich.
Right.
How much do you want to let me go? My father is very rich. You could have the entire world at your fingertips.
I'm sure he'll give you whatever you want. Besides, I got to be back in time for an 11:30 call.
Listen, I have to be back by 11:30. I'm expecting a very important call.
Right. And
Which
what time zone?
Begs the question, what the hell time is it at this point? It's been night forever. So is she expecting an early 11:30 a.m. call? It's got to be well past 11:30 at night.
It has to be.
She sent Freddy to bed.
Yeah.
The moon has been out. She's been kidnapped. She's in the middle, and she's expecting an 11:30 call. Can't be at 11:30 at night.
Well, and going back to what you were just saying about her saying, oh, my dad's got all this money and everything, she is used to getting what she wants and being in control. She's kind of spoiled. She's completely spoiled. She is used to getting things her way.
Yeah.
You know what I realized her Achilles heel is? And this is what works for Frankenstein's creature. She says the line, speak, why don't you speak?
Speak, why don't you speak?
He has not said a word to her.
Yeah.
So apparently, go ahead, Pete.
Well, I was wondering, does he understand anything that she's saying either?
I think so.
You think he understands, English or whatever she's speaking at this point, Romanian?
I think we have to accept that he has understanding, because we've watched him play with the girl at the well, and he knew how to pull petals off. He knew how to wave goodbye. He knew how to blow a kiss just by her telling her to do it.
Yeah.
He met with the blind man, knew how to hold a bowl of soup, what a bowl of soup was, knew what wine was, eagerly looked forward to that glass of wine.
He understood putting on the Ritz training.
Yeah, I mean, he has been singing Putting on the Ritz. I think he may not know how to speak well at this point, but I think he understands an awful lot. And if you look at how Peter Boyle very subtly has a pleased look on his face, like he's really happy. He doesn't look necessarily menacing in this scene. And I think that's a good play from the director. He looks happy. He looks like, hey, this is going to be a good night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Elizabeth, at one point while she's talking to him, he starts to pull the jacket off of his shoulders. So I know, as uncomfortable as this seems, as he's kind of got the jacket over his shoulders, I don't think he ever actually undresses.
No, he doesn't.
Because he's still got his jacket on when the camera comes around, and he kind of puts both arms out when he's like, well, what do you want?
Yep.
And all of a sudden he makes a move almost like he's unzipping his zipper.
Right. I think that's what happened.
And that's where she gets the woof.
Right.
And her eyes go wide, and she's just like, oh my.
Like, as soon as he does that, kind of unzipping his zipper, he gets kind of a funny smile on his face.
He does.
Like he knows exactly what her reaction's going to be.
It's definitely a goofy looking boy first time look.
Yeah. It is. This is a crazy scene. And
the way they shoot it, which I kind of like, I mean, you have to fill in your mind the blanks. You obviously know what's happening, but they keep it, I guess, as PG. In your mind as they can. Because when he sort of lays down on top of her, he is so big and lumbering, and keeping that big black coat on, you get maybe just a sliver of the back of his head, and you get just a sliver of her hairline over his shoulder, and that's it. You don't see him moving up and down. You eventually see her arm very almost caressing, coming up over his shoulders as she's singing, "Oh, sweet mystery of life, I'm so glad I found you," which she sings in beautiful operatic. We now have it confirmed. Just what a great singer Madeline Kahn is.
She has an amazing voice.
And to pick an operatic sound, like we always think of like hitting that crescendo of like when you're in the middle of, being with somebody you truly love and you're... See, kids, when a mommy loves a daddy and they decide it's time for a family, they might engage in activities like this. But I think the reason they picked this operatic delivery is you sort of imagine that's sort of the crescendo, the climax, the
right.
So she sings this lyric, and it's a little bit of a change to the actual lyric, because the actual lyric is "Sweet mystery of life, I'm so glad I found thee," and it comes from an old play. And Pete, you did some wonderful research before we started, so I'm going to let you explain to our audience this particular line, where it comes from, and why does it make sense for Elizabeth to suddenly belt out into this lyric?
Yeah, it originally comes from an operetta back in the late 1700s, but the character Marietta, naughty Marietta, is singing this song by a fountain, and a guy comes by who falls instantly in love with her, and she says that she will fall in love with whoever is able to finish singing the song that she's singing, because she heard it in a dream. And then later in the movie, this guy will, there are all kinds of crazy things that happen. And later in the movie, he ends up singing the end of the song. He completes the song that she starts singing, and then she falls for him.
Oh no. Is that where we get "You complete me"?
You complete me. And I just had...
Just shut up. You had me at hello.
I would like it better if that is where we got it, I think. But it's like she's been waiting for the monster all along. Like, this is secretly, what she's always wanted.
All these men she's had, none of them have done it for her like, well, a 7.5 foot long, 65-inch wide gorilla.
Hey, there's someone for everyone.
It's interesting that the musical, or the what'd you call it, an operetta, was actually entitled Naughty Marietta.
Yeah. And it was in 1935. That is the
movie came out in 1935, but the operetta was before that, 17th century, right? You said? Or did you say 18th century?
18th century. But yeah, really, the operetta is old. Yeah.
But for 1935, that is a very provocative film title.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Naughty Marietta?
Yeah.
So now we got Naughty Elizabeth. She's been waiting for her sweet mystery of life, and so glad she found him.
She found him.
Yep.
I mean, that's obviously, that lyric specifically means whatever it was she was lacking in her life, whatever she thought she didn't have, all of a sudden in this one moment has been realized, and that's why she breaks out into song. And I think that's what we're supposed to get out of this. I'm curious if a 1974 audience sitting in the theater for the first time, we already talked about the Transylvania Station and the whole play on the Chattanooga Choo Choo. That wasn't so far removed from the 30 years or so from World War II. But we're talking, would people have known this song back then?
That's a great question. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because you, as filmmakers, you put in jokes and you put in things, and you hope you don't put in things that the audience doesn't get. And the line, obviously, in and of itself is funny. Sweet mystery of life, so glad I found you. But because it comes from Naughty Marietta, and because of what you said, Pete, that the original meaning was a woman who had just stumbled across somebody and said, if you can complete this lyric, you're the love of my life. And I think there's too many ways that these all go together to say that this is just a random thing by Mel Brooks and Gene Wilder.
Right. Yeah, and I feel like he's always done that. Like, he's always kind of grounded in two generations. A lot of his stuff calls back to earlier generations. And I mean, I'm sure that's intentional here too.
It's got to be intentional. And I love the fact that it harkens back to that she's singing a song from a movie and called Naughty Marietta, because it only goes, listeners group, to what I had said so long ago, that she is not a stranger to the bedroom. She just is a stranger to Freddy's bedroom.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and ask it again right now. Of course, we'll see. I think it gets confirmed even more. But as of this very moment, when she says "woof" and then sings "Sweet Mystery of Life, I'm so glad I found you," and finally looks like she's happy and content, and she's singing like a lark to the top of her lungs, is this her very first time or not?
Oh,
Walt?
No.
Okay, so she's a wild woman about town.
Yeah.
Pete, what about you?
Yeah, it's not her first time.
Suck it.
Yeah, no,
I'm the only one who's bashing our listeners.
Yeah. No, I agree with the listeners. Whatever they said, that's what I'm going with. Hashtag Walt rules.
Hashtag Walt sucks up.
Well, she has used her sensuality throughout the movie to get what she wants. And, she's a pro. So, yeah, no, this is not her first time.
Here's what's something interesting. I don't know if they decided to change the song, though, because in the original script, as they went to shoot this movie, a female vocalist is supposed to be played on an old 78 record. Rather than her singing, we're supposed to hear just on the soundtrack, if you will, somebody singing, "Heaven, I'm in heaven, and my heart beats so that I can hardly speak." It's similar in tone, but I like this better.
Yeah.
Well, and I like the fact that she is singing.
Yes.
Right.
So,
right.
And I think that maybe that's another reason we needed to have her sing so well the Battle Hymn of the Republic, not just as a way of accidentally luring the love of her life to her bedroom, much like naughty Marietta.
That's right.
But I think we had to sense that she's a very good singer to make sure, because we never see her sing. We only hear it, but it's obvious it's her singing.
Right.
Yeah, very true.
So,
and it's interesting how much of this movie is people fit into a certain social stratum. You know, like she ostensibly fits into this, you know, she's high society and this is not what she should want. And, you know, Dr. Frankenstein was Dr. Frankenstein, and that's not, you know, he didn't want to be a guy taking over this old-timey work to reanimate the dead. He was a modern physician. And it's interesting how much of the movie is people going against what society or what their past has told them to do, and they're trying to become something new or embrace, I guess, who they really were in the first place.
So the whole movie on the underlying might be figuring out who you really are and animating the real self instead of being stuck with the dead part of you that's not really doing a whole lot for you.
Oh, yeah, I like that.
I do think there's a lot of that. We had a preacher in here not too many minutes ago who we talked about the whole when Dr. Frankenstein goes into the room to try to show his creature he's loved, and we talk about how love can redeem, but at the same time Frankenstein at that point is still doing it for such selfish reasons. He wants to show the world, I'm going to put you on the stage and I'm going to make a spectacle of you and I'm going to show everyone how good I am. And we still have to see that he has yet to discover that playing God is a whole lot different than actually truly loving that creature for that creature, not for you. And so he still isn't there yet. And I think there's a lot of that symbolism throughout this as well.
Yeah, that's good. I like that too.
Yeah, and it is interesting along that line that there's always mixed motives. You know, we all have a selfishness.
Is it mixed motives or is it sometimes misplaced motives?
Yeah, probably.
Because you sometimes have expectations of what you think you're supposed to be doing instead of what you really are meant to do.
And you have expectations of what the other person should be as well.
Yeah.
So, I think this movie, oddly for a comedy, really speaks to the human condition a lot and on a lot of levels.
I think so. The more I talk about it, unlike you poor guys doing the Indiana Jones Minute, who have decided you hate the movies. I'm kidding. I have decided the more I dive into these minute at a time, there are so many layers, and if you don't catch them all, it doesn't ruin the movie. It doesn't make the movie worse. But when you do slow it down and you realize what's happening sometimes beneath the surface, or what are some of those bigger motifs that are slowly being uncovered throughout the film, the idea of being a parent rather than creating life in the sense of playing God, what is it to be responsible for the child you brought into this world? What is it to be true to yourself? What is it to not put false expectations on people or try to manipulate people? There's so much of that at play through the whole movie. And I love the fact that, as Gene Wilder said when he went to write the script, the whole goal when it first started, and he wrote just 7 or 8 pages of notes, I want to tell a Frankenstein story with a happy ending.
Yeah, which is interesting. And Frankenstein, and we've talked about this before, that the doctor is a nearly impossible character to capture in the course of one movie, because he essentially is the monster. He's the one who is trying to manipulate everyone and everything to his own ways and his own desires. So it really is just an interesting movie the more we dig into it.
Yeah.
We begin to wind down this minute, and of course it looks as though it's ending on a happy note and a high note, even though it's a little uncomfortable.
Yes, it is. Glad to get by this minute.
I do want to point back. I usually go around and ask anybody else, but I'm going to start with me. Hey, Alan, do you have anything we forgot to hit? Yes, we do.
Thank you. Is there anything that we've forgotten to hit?
I do like having intelligent conversation, and often it means talking to myself. So, one of the things I did want to touch on, we've sort of hit it, but I want to go back to it. If you look at intention on the actors' faces, Intention always revealing what's happening emotionally in the scene. And sometimes by watching something with the sound off, you have to try to figure out, okay, what are they conveying? When we hear volume, when we hear the delivery, that helps set. But sometimes body language, and they always say 90% of communication is nonverbal. You have to kind of contextually put in, all right, how loud are they talking? What's the pace of their delivery? Are they looking at me sideways? Are they coming at me? Are they yelling? There's so many other things that go into making something communicable. Like, how do I understand what you're trying to convey? Madeline Kahn is fantastic. Because initially, she's a little concerned about the fact that she's awoken in this strange place. The first close-up on her, right around second number 7, you see the shift where she's like, you know what? I'm going to be in charge. And she immediately puts on not only am I not afraid of you, I'm going to show you how this is going to play out. And you sense how much she's in control in the first few minutes or few seconds of this minute. But as he refuses to speak to her, he's not doing anything yet. He's just sort of kind of walking around. She's like, okay, I'm going to now command you. You are mine. And you see she's upset and frustrated. And that's the first time we've seen her act angry. Mm-hmm. Something has broken through her veneer. And then as he starts to lean down, she starts to get a little concerned. And it's not until all of a sudden she sees, eyes go wide, and she's like, okay, you know what? The little bit of concern I had about this going out of control, I'm suddenly all in. And she sells it with her face that she's not afraid. She's not feeling like she's attacked. I know it's a lot to digest in terms of what the action is, but I think because of Madeline Kahn's acting and her facial acting and the fact that she moves us literally moment to moment within seconds, is brilliant. She does such a good job of helping keep this scene from turning into something much darker. If you just explain to somebody that Frankenstein's monster gets to bang Elizabeth, you go, wait, what? Right. This sounds like there's at least, it's a two-way street here.
Right. Sure. And I think that they've done a great job not going that dark several times. The child at the well. Where...
Oh, he could have pitched her in. I think your idea would have been funny, though, that had she flown off the seesaw and landed in the well, that would have been funny.
Great.
But, no, they didn't. They didn't go dark.
Yeah, and everybody knew from the 1931 that she was going in the lake and she was done for, but instead they finished it off another way. So they have avoided the really dark stuff on several occasions with some really good humor.
So that was my thing that I wanted to just go back and circle around to. Walt, is there anything in this minute that you want to circle back around to? Minute number 94?
No, I think I'm good. I think we've kind of fleshed it out and gotten by it.
Fleshed it out in this scene. You used that expression, did you?
Yeah, sorry about that.
At some point, that vacant wasteland is going to be filled.
That nuclear test ground of
Pete, what about
brain.
You? No, I'm ready to move on from this one.
I noticed Pete said like 3 words the whole...
He's like, I'm uncomfortable. Why did I agree to be here? Quint set the fire. All right. Well, we want everyone to stick around because this scene still does kind of play out. We've got to keep going with it a little bit because there's going to be, first of all, we're going to see starting tomorrow something really odd with Inspector Kemp. But before I get there and set the table for the Friday release of this week's edition of The Wilder Ride, Pete, where can people learn a little bit more about where you guys have a podcast of your own?
You can find us at IndianaJonesMinute.com, and we talk about all the Indiana Jones movies, including coming up soon, Crystal Skull, 1 minute at a time.
Woohoo! What movie is that? I don't know. What is this movie? No, I'm kidding. You know what? That joke is going to play itself out so far that I think you're right. You're going to find people going, crap, it's not as bad as I thought it was.
Right. It's not as bad as I was hoping it was.
So, all right, Walt, what about us? Where can people learn more about The Wilder Ride?
Well, one place to find us is on our website at thewilderride.com. And from there, we have links to our Facebook page and our Patreon page and all the other great places you can find us.
And I want to invite everyone to come back tomorrow. Even if you've stumbled on this minute and you just say, wait, what happens next? Well, come back tomorrow and we'll tell you exactly as we continue minute number 95 with Elizabeth singing, and we will end with Elizabeth saying, "Come over here, you hot monster." So talk about a shift in the storylines. But yes, we're going to, and there's actually a bit of a mob scene still in the middle and something weird with Inspector Kemp. All of that coming your way tomorrow. So come on back here to this, The Wilder Ride.
And I'm still going to have to break out that weird Marietta movie and see what that's all about.
You know, I forgot to tell Doug when he was here and he stayed over from the Rocky Minute and he said, thanks for the prostitute. I forgot to tell him that was naughty Marietta.
Yeah, I grew up in Marietta.
So which of you guys is going to pay for services? That guy over there. He likes talking about guys who beat meat for a living. So if he can beat his meat, you go beat his meat with him. That's the Rocky Minute. Thank you, guys. Doug Greenberg.